Rain tore across the Montana Valley like God himself had given up on the world. Silas couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. Water poured off his hat brim in sheets. His horse stumbled through mud that sucked at its hooves with every step. He almost rode past her. A shape in the storm. Small. Crumpled. Wrong. Silas pulled hard on the reins. Through the downpour, he saw her clearly now. A woman collapsed at the roadside, soaked to the bone, clutching a small valise like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her dress clung to her frame, revealing how dangerously thin she was. Her shoes had disintegrated. Bare skin showed through torn leather. Mud covered her from the waist down. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart. Red-rimmed, hollow. The eyes of someone who had walked until there was nothing left. She looked up at him through the rain. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, barely a whisper. "Please." That single word carried the weight of 40 miles. Of 3 days without food. Of a promise that had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Silas didn't ask questions. He reached down his hand. She took it. Inside, his cabin smelled like loneliness. Dirty dishes, cold ashes, dust thick enough to write your name in. He hadn't had a visitor in 3 years, hadn't wanted one. The woman stood dripping on his floor, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. She still held that valise against her chest like a shield. Silas fed kindling to the stove until fire caught. He grabbed a wool blanket and held it out without looking at her face. Get warm. Her fingers were ice when they brushed his. He poured black coffee into a tin cup. She wrapped both hands around it, but they shook so badly the liquid sloshed over the rim. She hadn't eaten right in days, maybe longer. Steam rose from her dress as it dried. The smell of wet wool filled the room, mixed with something else. Lavender, faint and ghostly, like a memory from another life. She finally spoke. "My name is Faith. My parents died when I was 17. Scarlet fever. Same week." Silas said nothing. He knew about loss. "I worked in a sewing factory, 12 hours a day, 72 cents a week. Then I saw the advertisement. Montana rancher seeking wife. Hard-working and sincere. A new life awaits." Her hands tightened on the cup. "We wrote letters for 3 months. He said his name was James Hollister. He said he had a ranch with cattle and good water. He said he'd meet me at the Willow Creek Depot, wearing a blue kerchief. I sold everything I owned for a train ticket. 2 days I waited at that depot, sleeping on a bench, drinking from the pump, watching every man who walked past. He never came." Silas felt something cold settle in his gut. He knew that name. James Hollister ran the mercantile in town. He had a wife, 2 children, a white picket fence. He had never owned a ranch in his life. "So I started walking. 40 miles, 3 days. One woman gave me bread. That was all." She opened the valise with trembling fingers and pulled out a stack of letters tied with kitchen string. The paper was soft from rain. The ink had run. "His name was James Hollister. You know him." It wasn't a question. Silas nodded once. "He's got a family." The words hung in the air like smoke. Faith didn't scream, didn't cry. She stood, walked to the stove, and fed the letters into the flames, one by one. 3 months of lies burned away in seconds. You can stay, Silas said, as long as you need. She watched the last letter turn to ash. Then she said the words that would change everything. I don't take charity. I work for my keep. Faith slept for 16 hours straight. When she finally emerged, Silas woke to a smell he hadn't known in years. Cornbread. The cabin had transformed. Dishes clean, floor swept, windows scrubbed. She stood at the stove with her hair pinned up, wearing an old apron she'd found somewhere. I told you, I don't take charity. Silas sat at the table and ate in silence. It tasted like something he'd lost a long time ago. But something wasn't right. Faith worked with mechanical precision. She cleaned what hadn't been touched in months, mended shirts he'd forgotten existed, learned the rhythm of his land without being told. But her eyes stayed distant, locked, like she was moving through life from behind a wall of glass. She smiled when appropriate, said good morning and thank you, but she never laughed, never hummed, never let her guard down. Not once. Until the 10th morning. Mr. Silas, may I plant some flowers by the porch? It was such a small thing, such an ordinary request, but no one had asked him for anything in years. Plant what you want. That afternoon he watched her kneel in the dirt with his old hand spade. Sleeves rolled past her elbows, digging small holes with care. She hummed while she worked. Quiet, almost inaudible, but it was there, the first crack in the wall. That night, Faith set her valise in the corner of the front room and left it there. She didn't carry it from room to room anymore, didn't keep it by her feet. She left it resting against the wall. I'm tired of carrying it. Silas understood what she really meant. But trouble was coming. It always did. 7 days later, they rode into town so Faith could mail a letter. The moment they arrived, Silas felt it. The stares, the whispers, the way people's eyes followed Faith like she was something contaminated. Inside the general store, Martha Perkins smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. Well now, Silas, been a while. And who might this be? She's helping at my place. Helping. Martha tasted the word. Let it sit on her tongue. Behind them, women whispered. Their words carried. Mail-order bride, left at the depot like unwanted baggage. Living with Silas now, alone, shameful. Faith's shoulders tensed, but she kept walking, didn't look back. The ride home was silent. They think I'm a fallen woman, living in sin. Doesn't change what's true. She looked at him, really looked. Thank you for letting me stand my ground. But 3 days later, everything changed. Old Wilbur, the mail carrier, appeared at the cabin. He didn't normally stop at Silas's place. Bank got robbed last night. Willow Creek. Cleaned out the safe. Folks are roused. He paused. Too long. Sheriff's talking to everyone who came through town lately. Thought you ought to know. His gaze flicked toward Faith again. Silas felt his fists tighten. That evening, when Silas rode to town for horse medicine, Pete Tucker pulled him aside in the saloon. I'm telling you because your daddy helped mine once. Jenkins is spreading talk. Says he saw a woman near the bank the night before the robbery. Says it was the girl staying with you. Silas's stomach dropped. Jenkins was old, half blind, known for getting things wrong. But fear didn't care about truth, and the town was already afraid. When Silas returned home, he found supper waiting. Beans, cornbread, a candle glowing in the center of the table. Faith smiled faintly. "You look troubled this morning. Thought a proper meal might help." Silas sat, ate in silence, watched her hands, her calm, her innocence. But doubt was a splinter, small but sharp. Did he trust her because she deserved it, or because he needed to? That night he watched from the porch as Faith stood in the yard, looking out over the valley. The sky glowed with fading light. Her shoulders rose and fell slowly. Then they began to shake. She was crying, silently, in the dark where she thought he couldn't see. Silas stood in the shadows and let the sight break him open. He believed her. He always had. But belief wouldn't protect her from what was coming, because the sheriff was on his way. Morning sun barely cleared the ridge when hooves sounded on the hard-packed dirt. Slow, heavy, purposeful. Sheriff Harlan rode up on his gray horse, steam blowing from its nostrils in the cool air. His face was carved from stone. Faith came to the doorway, wiping flour from her hands. "Ma'am, mind if I ask her a few questions?" Silas stepped down from the porch, placing himself between them. "Ask." "When did you arrive in Willow Creek?" 5 weeks ago, September 16th. "Where'd you come from?" "Cincinnati. I worked at the Morrison textile mill." "Anyone who can vouch for where you were the night before the robbery?" Faith's jaw tightened. "I was here, in this cabin." Harlan's eyes shifted to Silas. "You confirm that?" "She didn't leave. Not once." The sheriff wrote something, closed his book, tucked it back into his vest. "I ain't decided anything yet, but don't leave the county." Then he leaned closer to Silas, voice dropping low. "And if I were you, I'd sleep with one eye open." He rode away, dust trailing behind him. Faith stood frozen in the yard, her face drained of all color. That night, Silas woke to the sound of fabric rustling. He stepped into the front room and found Faith kneeling on the floor beside her open valise. Clothes spilled across the boards, her hands shaking as she stuffed them inside. "What are you doing?" "I have to leave. You heard him. The town thinks I did it. If I stay, they'll blame you too. They'll take your land, everything your family built." She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "I am not worth that." The words tore something inside him. "Sit down. Sit down at the table. I'll make coffee." They sat together at 3 a.m, 2 cold cups between them. "I used to believe things happened for a reason. My mother taught me that." "I held on to it even when she died, even when my father died a week later. But there is no reason in this. A man lies. A woman walks 40 miles on a promise that never existed. A town decides she's guilty because someone has to be." Silas listened to every word. Then he told her about his parents, how he buried them at 14, how his brother sold the family land and left him with nothing but the cabin, how winter nearly killed him, how he hadn't trusted another soul since, except her. "Maybe you came here because somebody needed a reminder that not everyone leaves." He stood, his voice rough but steady. "You stay or you go. That's your choice. But don't leave thinking you're saving me." He walked to his room. Behind him, he heard her breath shudder. She stayed. 2 weeks crawled by like years. Faith worked quietly, cooked, cleaned, tended her flowers. But the light in her eyes dimmed. Then one morning, Sheriff Harlan returned. His face looked different now. Heavy. Guilty. "Ma'am, we caught the men who robbed the bank." Faith froze on the porch steps. 4 of them, holed up in Ridgewater. They confessed to the Willow Creek job. There was no woman with them. Jenkins got it wrong. The woman he saw had yellow hair. Nothing like yours. Silas felt something uncoil inside him, slow and deep. The sheriff lowered his eyes. "Miss Faith, I owe you an apology. We all do." Faith didn't move, didn't soften. She simply said, "Thank you for telling me." Her calm words carrying months of hurt. People began arriving days later. Martha Perkins came first with a pie shoved forward like a peace offering. "Apple, made it this morning." "Thank you, Martha." The preacher came next, offering an invitation back to Sunday service. Jenkins never came, but a letter arrived. Shaky handwriting, crooked lines. A short apology from an old man who had spoken without seeing. Faith read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in her chest. "I'm not ready to forgive him. But I'm not ready to burn it either." The days warmed, her garden bloomed. The cabin changed, clean windows, mended boards, new curtains she sewed by hand. It felt like a place built by 2 people instead of 1. One evening, Faith sat beside Silas on the porch bench, close enough their shoulders touched. "I used to wonder why that man lied to me, why he wrote those letters, why he let me travel all that way. But I don't wonder anymore. If he had met me, I wouldn't be here." She turned toward him. "I think I got the better end of the bargain." That night she pulled her valise onto the table and opened it. She burned the last of James Hollister's letters in the stove. Then she placed 3 new things inside. The handkerchief Silas had given her, a dried marigold from her garden, and a folded scrap of paper with 1 word written on it. Home. They sat on the porch under the stars. Faith leaned her head gently against Silas's shoulder. After a long moment, she asked, "That first night, why did you stop for me?" Silas thought about it. "Don't know. Just did." Faith smiled. A small, quiet smile filled with peace. "My mother used to say that Providence sends people when we need them most. Not a moment sooner, not a moment later." Silas didn't answer. Instead, he reached for her hand on the bench. Their fingers intertwined naturally, easily, like they had always belonged together. The valley lay wide before them. The stars turned slowly overhead. The cabin behind them glowed warm with lamplight. Faith squeezed his hand. Silas squeezed back. 2 people once abandoned by the world sat together in the quiet night. No longer alone. No longer walking separate roads. They had built something new, something gentle, something strong. Something that finally felt like home.